What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to the DFS Picks and Prediction Show. I am here with Weezy, AJ, and Luke. And as always, we're going to go through this card from a DFS perspective. We're going to talk our fights to target, fights to fade, fighter to fade, favorite dog, favorite GPP play, favorite cash play, favorite value play, favorite dart throw. Go through our lineups last week, talk about our new lineups, see who wins this week, give our quick picks, and answer any questions you guys have in the chat. We will start with you, Weezy. Weezy, what is up? You looking forward to this card?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to this card. I mean, 15 fantastic fights on this card, and there's like none of them that I'm ready to skip over or that I'm not interested in. I mean, this is really a fantastic card from top to bottom. And like I was looking at that 9,000 plus range, and I'm trying to find a way to figure all 6 of them into my lineup. So it's going to be hard this week. It's going to be hard to get under that salary cap because my wish list for this Christmas is to get some of these 9,000 fighters in my lineup, but it's going to be hard, man. I can't wait to figure out how we're going to do that this week.
For sure. We'll definitely talk about it. Luke, you are back. How you feeling, man?
I'd say probably about 85%, but still got some of the lingering COVID effects, still getting the taste back. But yeah, man, it's been a brutal last couple weeks for me. So but yeah, I'm definitely feeling on the up and up, and I got absolutely smoked from a betting perspective last week. So chomping at the bit to get back after it.
Yeah, feel you there, and yeah, glad you are feeling better. AJ, how are you doing? You looking forward to this card?
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Last pay-per-view event of the year for us. One of the better fights of 2021 is in the main event, Poirier versus Oliveira. This is what the people want to see. There's a lot of good opportunities in this card from a DFS perspective. Obviously, we got 15 fights, but also, as we talked about in the past on these pay-per-view cards, you could definitely get an edge with some of the earlier prelims. People just don't gravitate towards them because there's just not as much eyeballs on them. They're not as sexy to look at, but there's some spots that we'll get to that I'm really interested for from a GPP perspective on DraftKings.
Cannot wait to talk through it with you guys. If everybody in the chat can please leave a like on the video. Also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio, Raw Torque. First one in the chat saying, let's get after it, fellas. Spread the word that the finest MMA content can only be found at Pub Sports Radio. Appreciate you, Raw Torque, for hanging out. But as always, we'll start with our fight to target, and we'll start with you, Uncle Weezy. What is your favorite fight to target for UFC 269?
Yeah, nothing surprising here. I'm going to go with Oliveira Poirier, the main event. It's the third best inside the distance line on the slate, but despite the fact that it's the third best inside the distance line, both fighters really do have a legit chance to win this fight. I mean, the other 2 fights that have a better inside the distance line, which is Peña against Nunes and Wright against Silva, you know, I have a lot less confidence in the underdog, but I think this is a fight that, you know, you might be damn near 100% exposed to simply because both of these guys are such fantastic finishers. It's a really high implied probability to finish inside the distance. I believe it's around 78% if you look at the aggregate of the fight doesn't go to decision lines right now. They're saying that this thing has a 78% chance of finishing inside the distance. So, you know, both high-scoring guys. There should be a good mix of grappling in this one as well, and an early finish is a very high possibility. So, yeah, for 86 and 7,600 on a week where you're really trying to get some of these 9,000 plus guys in there, it'd be nice to be heavily exposed to this fight.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I feel like I'm going to be like pretty much near 100% in that fight. Luke, how about you? What is your favorite fight to target this week?
Yeah, I think that's probably obviously the most main option. But I'm actually going to go Sakai and Tuivasa, just because I also do have this like weird thing in, you know, it's just kind of been going on that all of these main events just tend to be going the distance and things that are not predictive to go the distance. So I think it's just something a bit interesting to note from a narrative perspective. But Sakai and Tuivasa, it's got the 5th best ITD line on the slate at roughly 70% implied. In both guys, UFC runs their fights finish at a 75% clip. Both guys are pretty horrible defensive strikers, with Sakai defending strikes at 50%, Tuivasa at 51%. It's a heavyweight fight at the end of the day. Both guys are going to come forward. Both guys are going to chuck heat. I'd be relatively surprised to see this one hit the scorecards. I know both guys have shown like some durability components in the past. I get that. But I think Tai Tuivasa mainly fights in a way that just forces action, just kind of throws everything out the window. So in a fight that there shouldn't be too much grappling in, considering that, Tai has been wrestled before, but Sakai only lands 0.14 takedowns per 15 minutes. I think we're largely going to see a stand-up affair here where the two big boys are going to go ahead and swing. I like this fight to finish. And with both guys kind of sitting around that evens mark, Weezy kind of touched on it. We have, some pretty heavy chalked up people in the upper ranges of salary. When you're looking to fit people in, I think both of these guys got a pretty good shot to hit the optimal. So I want heavy exposure to this fight.
Sounds good. So we have the heavyweight fight there. For me, I'm going to give a different one than both you guys. Mine's going to be Andre Muniz going against Eric Anders. It's minus 245. Fight doesn't go to decision. It's one of those fights where I feel like whoever is going to have success is probably going to get a finish, whether it's Muniz getting the fight down to the mat. His submission game is next level. Not too many people, nobody really submits Jacare Souza. He was able to do that. And then on the flip side, if Eric Anders is able to stuff the takedowns, get into deeper waters, I do think he has the cardio and the power to put Muniz out, who has been finished by knockout in all of his losses. So I think if Muniz wins, it's probably a submission and probably an early one as well. But I think if Anders wins, I think it's going to be by finish as well. So that's my favorite fight to target. How about you, AJ? What is your favorite fight to target this week?
Yeah, one on the prelims that really interests me is Ryan Hall versus Derek Minor. 34 of Derek Minor's 38 professional fights have finished under 2.5 rounds. He's like that kill or be killed type of fighter in there. And he really goes for it, right? Like the one fight we saw him go the distance in the UFC, it was against Charles Rosa, and Rosas was just content to play guard. I don't think Hall will oblige to that game. He'll just aggressively hunt for the sub from his back. And I think that with Minor's willingness to go to the ground, he's such an aggressive submission grappler. It's going to play right into Hall's hands, and Hall's going to look for a submission from his back. But on the flip side, Minor is really aggressive. He's dangerous. He's even been able to put some defensively responsible grapplers in bad spots, a la Darren Elkins last fight. So again, I think that if Minor wins this fight, it's by early finish. He can maybe even knock Hall out as well. But Hall's really good submission grappling, specifically his leg lock game, I think is a good spot for him to exploit Minor, who has been submitted in a lot of his losses.
I like it. Yeah, so we all gave 4 different ones there. And yeah, there's a ton of great fights to target. We'd even talk about the Bruno Silva Jordan Wright. I think that's another great fight to target. But yeah, let's see if you guys are staying in the chat. Mbe liking Robertson versus Priscilla. I believe that's the first fight of the night. I do like that one to target as well. Bon Quiqui saying Muniz, Anders, and Minor Hall. I guess we both gave out those ones there. What's up, Brian? How you doing? Great card indeed. What is up, Max? And then Mbe saying Hall has only submitted old guys. Well, Minor's been submitted like a million times, so it would not shock me there. But we'll move on to the next one here. Our fight to fade. We'll start with you, Luke. What is your fight to fade for UFC 269?
I'm going to go with Munhoz and Cruz. I don't think there would be a fight I would say I'd necessarily fade on this entire slate. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go this one. It's got the second worst ITD line at roughly 40% implied. Munhoz can crack. He does hit hard. Cruz has been KO'd before. But in general, Dominick Cruz does defend strikes at 68%. Cruz can wrestle, but Munhoz has elite level takedown defense, and he has that really nasty guillotine too, which just in general has often discouraged shots from guys because they don't want to mess around with it. So I think Cruz is probably going to mind his P's and Q's there. It's also a fight that should primarily take place on the feet, with the primary finishing upside coming from a Munhoz KO, in my opinion, which is still roughly only a 25% implied outcome per the odds. There should be a lot of strikes thrown in here, but with just so many other fights on this slate that are projected to finish inside the distance, with a fight, in my opinion, that has little grappling potential here in Munhoz and Cruz, I think it's a good one to fade.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I want the same thing. Fight to fade, Cruz, Munhoz. It's plus 150. Fight doesn't go to decision. Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's not going to be much grappling. I don't think either guy's going to go for takedowns here. I think it's going to be, a point fight where Dom Cruz kind of stays on the outside, uses his movement there, goes to decision, and probably not scoring a ton. But yeah, if Munhoz does win, I could potentially see a finish. That's what I would worry about. But yeah, this would be the one fight I would fade if I had to pick one. Weezy, how about you? What is your fight to fade?
Easiest question on the slate, and that's I'm right there with you guys here. The problem is that the only fight that has a higher percentage of chance to go to decision is Maverick against Blanchfield. And if you compare the grappling upside in Maverick Blanchfield to Cruz Munhoz, it's not even close. I mean, like I could see over 50% of the Maverick Blanchfield fight taking place in control time positions, while I'd be surprised if Munhoz Cruz took place in control time positions even 10% of the time. Exactly what Luke just said about you just don't want to shoot on Pedro Munhoz with your head on the outside. I mean, his guillotine is so nasty, and his takedown defense is elite. It always has been. So that's a part of Dominick Cruz's game that he's went to quite a bit. So I think that fight's probably the most likely fight to go to decision on this card. And it's going to be probably 85, 90% at striking range. And those fights don't score well on DraftKings. So it's the easiest one to avoid.
Sounds good. And then AJ will be right back. So it looks like all three of us are on the same page there. We'll move on to the fighter to fade. For me, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to go with Julianna Peña, 6,500. She's very cheap, but I just think Amanda Nunes is going to finish her probably early on. Don't give her much of a chance. The odds don't really either. We see Nunes is approaching minus 1,000 on most books. So not really a fighter I would fade outside of her. I mean, maybe I'm not going to have a ton of Dom Cruz, but I think Julianna Peña is going to be in about zero of my lineup. So how about you, Weezy? What is your fighter to fade?
It's the exact same thing. I mean, when you look at the fighters that are on the lower end of the spectrum here, you got a guy like Paiva, and O'Malley's been hurt before in fights. I mean, if on the small percentage of chance that Paiva does win, I think he's got a better chance to do it inside the distance than, Julianna Peña does. Even guys like Jordan Wright are absolute finishers. So if he does win, it'll probably be inside the distance. If Priscilla Cachoeira beats Jillian Robertson, it's probably going to be inside the distance by knockout. So even Matt Schnell is really sneaky off his back. Tony Kelly at 7,200 is a better is a better chance to finish than any of these than Julianna Peña does. So I mean, yeah, it's really, as much as you'd like to free up some salary this week to get up there, get some of that top range, I wouldn't recommend putting Peña in your lineup except for just as a way to, completely save salary and then try to get 5 fighters that you think can really ball out. But yeah, I don't think Peña's going to do anything.
Yep, looks like we're on the same page there. So AJ, you are back. So what is your fight to fade? And then go ahead and give your fighter to fade as well.
Yeah, sure thing. So fight to fade is going to be actually Munhoz and Anders. Munhoz 85, Anders 77. Totally understand the logic with the odds. The fight says it's likely to finish. Munhoz is typically kill or be killed. However, when I watch Anders fight, he just seems like really, really tough and durable, and he's also well-rounded enough to avoid getting finished. On the flip side, he carries some power, but he just fights at such a slow pace. And I'm not sold that he just totally knocks Munhoz out. Anders has faced some guys that have been knocked out several times and struggled to put him away. Krzysztof Jacko, Lyoto Machida, Gerald Mearshart comes to mind. And he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I think that Munhoz will have a tough time getting the large Anders to the ground. So think the fight will probably play out just based on the toughness of both guys and the defensive responsibility. In terms of a fighter to fade, I'm actually going to go with Randy Costa at 9K. He's a guy that's typically out there finishing dudes in the first round, but he's facing Tony Kelly, who's a pretty good striker, durable as well, going to have the length to compete with Costa at range, and another guy who hasn't been knocked out in his pro career. So I think with Costa, his reputation of being a first-round finisher, it'll draw some eyes. But in this matchup specifically against Kelly, I think he'll have a tough time putting him away early.
Oh, yeah. If he does not put away Kelly early, I do think he's in serious trouble there, as always. Luke, how about you? What is your fighter to fade?
I'm actually going to go Paiva at 7.1K. He's got the 4th worst ITD line on slate at sub 20%. I think it's just absolutely a horrible stylistic matchup for him. He only defends strikes at 50% and eats almost 5 per minute. O'Malley's the much faster party who's incredibly high output with roughly a 50% implied mark to finish the fight, which is actually short in my opinion. I think it should probably be higher than that, coupled with this being Paiva's second fight up at 135 pounds. And I just don't think he has the exact same physical advantages he does at this weight class that he did at 125 pounds. Coupled with that, I think Paiva even just getting a W in his last fight was an absolute gift. The fight should have been a draw if not scored for Phillips. So he's getting a pretty big step up in competition. I think O'Malley ices him. I just don't think there's much merit to Paiva here at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same page as you there. We'll move on now to our favorite dog here. We will start with you, AJ. What is your favorite dog for 269?
Favorite dog for me is going to be Charles Oliveira at 7,600, the main event underdog. A good striker, an underrated striker. I think Poirier bests him on the feet, but I do think that Oliveira can compete. But really, Oliveira does have the better grappling of the two. Poirier, a good submission grappler, but he does give up his back often. He has been submitted in the past, a la the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. And Oliveira is one of the best submission grapplers, if not the best submission grappler in the UFC, a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is a guy who has submitted Jim Miller, put Tony Ferguson in some tough spots on the ground when he faced him. And, again, I have to think that if Oliveira wins this matchup against Poirier, he's going to go out there and put up a big score and have a decent chance of being on the optimal lineup. He's typically a guy that is out there finishing fights in under 2.5 rounds usually. So I like Oliveira at 7,600. I think he has a lot of promise based on his upside in the matchup.
Yep, I agree. I'm with Oliveira as well. He's definitely going to be my highest owned dog. I'm not sure what I'm doing with the main event ownership yet, but I could see myself maybe going 50-50 right down the middle, 50% Dustin, 50% Charles. Like you mentioned, he's very, very dangerous. If he gets his fight down to the mat, he can be live for a submission. Even on the feet, like he's very dangerous as well. So 90% finish rate for Oliveira. I think if he does win, it is going to be inside the distance. 7,600 main event. Sign me up. Luke, how about you? Who's your favorite dog?
Going Eric Anders at 7.7, third best ITD line of anyone below the 8K range at roughly 30% implied. He's not the highest output guy in the world historically, but he's fighting a guy in Munhoz who just doesn't really do anything on the feet at all, to be completely honest. So that gives me some supreme confidence, at least in Anders, when this fight is standing. Coupled with the fact that Munhoz only defends strikes at 45%, and Anders will chuck heat. The main credence, obviously, to Munhoz is the ground. He's the much better grappler. The dude just went out there and submitted Jacare. I don't concede that at all, but Anders historically is an incredibly difficult guy to take down, stuffing takedowns at 76%. So I just think there's a bit of a binary nature to the fight of whether, Munhoz can land takedowns here or not. Obviously, if he does, he's very live for a submission, but if he doesn't, I think Anders is very live for a knockout, if not to just do more and win the fight here at 7.7K. I think he's got some upside in the fight.
I like it. I like Anders too. And then Weezy, how about you? Who's your favorite dog?
So, I was going to say Oliveira too. And I just echo everything that you guys just said. So I'll pivot off of that and I'll give you another one. Jeff Neal is an underdog on DraftKings. He's 8,000 and Ponzinibbio is 8,200. And, I know a lot of the narrative things right now about Jeff Neal. He was recently sick. He just got a DUI and had an unlicensed gun and all this shit. But let's face it. If the UFC hasn't let Keith Peterson go yet, you don't have to worry about getting let go for a DUI. So I gotta feel like at an underdog price, that is the second best inside the distance line Jeff Neal has of all the underdogs on the card. So. And we got to remember that just 2 fights ago, Ponzinibbio was finished in the absolute first round and destroyed by Li Jingliang. So, and Ponzinibbio coming off a long layoff 2 fights ago as well, and had some serious health problems. And he's going to be the older guy here. So, I think it could be a really sneaky, low-owned option with a very high percentage of finishing.
Sounds good to me. All does make sense. I like it. But we'll keep moving on to our favorite GPP play. We will start with you, Luke. Who are you liking for a GPP play?
I like Jillian Robertson at 9.3, fourth best ITD line in the slate at roughly 50% implied. The ground levels between both of these girls are absolutely massive, and we know that the DK scoring system is favorable to grapplers, and that is what Jillian Robertson has been 100% consistent to do throughout her UFC run. 72% of her fight time is spent grappling, and of that 72%, she's in control positions 68% of the time. The times we have seen Kashuer on bottom, it's looked horrible. Obviously, against Shevchenko, you can say give her a pass there. Okay, but let's look at what happened, recently against
Mazzani.
Homegirl Mazzani, who landed, I think, 5 or 6 takedowns. They all came incredibly easy. They even came in the second round as well. She obviously gassed, and then Kashuer knocked her out. But I just don't see really many scenarios as to why Jillian Robertson can't land takedowns in this fight. And obviously, in doing so, in her being able to get off on her game plan, she's incredibly live for a submission. She's incredibly live for a ground and pound finish. And then obviously, if she's able to get off on that game, that limits any sort of the equity of Cachoeira in this fight at all, which is more so just a come forward brooding standing TKO. So, I mean, there's technically some risk with Jillian in the sense that, she's not a great striker, but for, a lot of the reasons mentioned above, I just don't see this fight being at space for very long. And in terms of GPPs, she is a girl who has a game and a style in this particular matchup to go out there and win you a tournament.
For sure. Submission upside, takedown upside. I like it. For me, I'm going to go with Randy Costa, 9,000. As we all know, I think this guy is just round one or bust. And in that round one, it leaves a lot of upside. I do think he will definitely have some ownership. People are going to target him. But yeah, if he does win, I see it being an early finish. If he does not get that early finish, I have concerns about him winning. So I'm not going to play him in cash or nothing like that. But I think as a tournament play, he's somebody I'm definitely looking at. Weezy, how about you? Who's your favorite GBP play?
I'm going with Bruno Silva. He's just going to destroy Jordan Wright. And Jordan Wright is one of the worst defensive fighters in any division in the UFC. And, I just see this fight ending violently and ending quickly. And I see it Jordan Wright being the one looking up at the lights. So I think that if there's one fighter that has the absolute best chance of winning in 60 seconds on this entire card, it's Bruno Silva. So why not? 9,400. Let's go.
Yeah, I could see Jordan Wright getting into the cage, maybe slipping and getting knocked out from the canvas. So yeah, I definitely do like that. AJ, how about you? What are you liking for a GBP play?
I like Luke's point about Robertson. I'm actually going there as well. I feel like there's going to be a lot of love on Cachoeira just because she's cashed as an underdog a couple times in a row. And just talking with people throughout the week, without even me bringing up UFC, they brought up Cachoeira just out of the blue. So I feel like there's going to be enough underdog love on her side. And then also it's the first fight of the night, which, especially on a pay-per-view event, does not get near the love it deserves, especially in a matchup like this. It's likely to finish. That's what the odds say. And as Luke pointed out, Jillian just got such a massive grappling advantage here. You go back with Cachoeira, she's out there getting mounted by Molly McCann, getting her back taken by Gina Mazzani, getting put into submission attempts by Luana Carolina. And as Luke alluded to, Robertson's a much, much better grappler than all of those fighters, probably even combined. So she's got the potential to land takedowns, not to mention Cachoeira's got bad takedown defense, gets taken down with no resistance whatsoever. So she could get the takedown, she could advance in him out. From there, Lucas said she's got the nice composed elbows. She's more of like a rear naked choke specialist, but as I said, Cachoeira does give up her back, so that's within reason as well. So ground and pound stoppage, if not rear naked choke, I think Jillian's got a lot of grappling, top control, and takedown upside here.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I noticed the same thing. I see more people talking about Cachoeira than the main event this week. It's weird, but we'll keep moving on to our favorite cash play. We'll start with you, AJ. We'll start with you again. What are you liking for your favorite cash play?
Yeah, Priscilla. No, I'm just kidding. Amanda Nunes at 9,500. The female goat, as some call her. She is the biggest favorite on the card. 5-round fight. She has those 2 extra rounds if she needs them. She's a much better fighter than Julianna Peña everywhere. Better grappler, wrestler, striker. Peña's a decent fighter, but this is just such a bad matchup for her. 23% takedown defense. Nunes could get the takedowns, just kind of beat her up from top position. Even in that decision against Felicia Spencer, Nunes scored very, very well. So she's got finishing upside both on the feet and on the ground. Wasn't that long ago when Peña was submitted by Jermaine Duradame, who's a kickboxing specialist. So Nunes should have this fight everywhere. It's her fight to lose, and she's the biggest favorite on the card with the best finish prop. So metrics-wise, it makes sense. Matchup, it makes sense.
Yeah, I just think it'd be a big mistake not to play Nunes in cash. I feel like she should probably be 100% owned, and I'm definitely going to have her. I think she gets this done pretty handily, and like you said, very, very good score. I mean, the only time she has not scored, I think more than 98 points, was against Valentina Shevchenko both times, and Peña is definitely not Valentina Shevchenko. So yeah, I like Nunes quite a bit, especially in cash, but I feel like a lot of people will. Weezy, how about you? Who do you like it in cash the most?
I'm going to go with Dustin Poirier at 8,600. I think there are fighters that have a better chance to win, obviously, but the combination of the finish potential, the inside the distance odds, and the experience make Poirier at 8,600 some of the highest upside potential for the price. And there's so much up there, above 9,000 that I like, that being able to get, a guy in Poirier who's, I think that this fight could potentially very much come down to who wants it more and who's grittier and tougher and less likely to quit. And I would give that to Poirier because they're, obviously Oliveira has it on the ground. Poirier should be better on the feet. But as this goes later, we've never really seen Oliveira in those championship rounds. So if it does go late, I really like Poirier's chance. If he wins this fight, he's going to cover his salary easily. And then that'll allow you to fit some higher price guys in there as well. So, yeah, I'm going to say Dustin Poirier.
So in cash, Weezy, would you stack that fight in cash, or would you go one or the other?
I'd hate to stack on this card with 15 fights. You should be able to find somebody down there cheap in order to punt with that you think has some upside in order to avoid stacking on a 15-fight card. I could see doing it. I mean, if there was one fight that I would stack, it would probably be that one. But I would rather spread my ownership out and try to get a higher score.
Yep, sounds good. Luke, how about you? Who's your favorite cash play?
Yeah, I got to go Nunes, 9.5K. It's obviously the most obvious choice. She's minus 900 to win the fight as a whole with a roughly 75% implied probability to finish and a 40% implied round one prop, which is just crazy. Really, the hope for Peña is, Nunes potentially gassing. She has slowed down in some extended fights, but AJ brought up a lot of good points as well. Even with the defensive wrestling of Peña, I mean, we've seen her consistently out wrestled, at least early in pretty much damn near every one of her fights as well. So, even in the scenario that this fight goes long, there's no reason why Amanda Nunes can't land takedowns, be positionally responsible from top, if not secure a submission as well. I think she's just incredibly safe this week, and she's kind of your free square.
Yep, I'm right there with you. We do have 75 of you guys in here. If you guys can please leave a like on the stream if you guys are enjoying it. Also subscribe to Pub Sports Radio. We go live every Tuesday, 7 o'clock to break down the card from a DraftKings perspective. We're going to keep moving on to our favorite value play. We'll start with you, Weezy. Who's your favorite value play for 269?
So I'm going to go with Eric Anders. All four of Muniz's losses have been inside the distance and by knockout. And, that's what Eric Anders does have some pretty impressive power numbers thus far in the UFC. And Eric's UFC career, he's done a fantastic job of not being controlled by his opponents, which I think gives him if he can continue that trend, I think it's going to be, he's going to look like better than an underdog here because he's only spent in all the fights that he's had in the UFC, 7.76% of his UFC career being controlled. So that really bodes well he's also had 77% takedown defense. And he's been taken down quite a few times, but he gets up quickly. And he's so athletic and strong and moves so well that I think that Munhoz is going to have a hard time taking him down, holding him down, getting his game going. And I think it's a decent stylistic matchup. And if he does win, Anders, I think there's a really high probability of it being inside the distance because Muniz's chin is not very good.
Yep, I like that call. Luke, how about you? Who's your favorite value play?
So I guess it might be going a little different this week, but I'm going Garbrandt actually at 8.7. There's obviously no salary-based value on it as just money's kind of poured in on Kai Kara France, but it's also at the same token, why I think, Cody's a good value play because I think he's actually going to be lower owned and we're going to see quite a bit of exposure go to Kara France. Obviously, the main talking point is, how does Cody look down at 125 pounds, which we just don't know. But, if the cut goes fine for him, I actually think, it's a decent spot for him. You can say what you want about Cody, but he's been fighting the elites of the division, whereas Kai Kara France's best win is probably Paiva, who he arguably lost to, not to mention that 3 of 5 of Kai Kara France's W's have come over guys no longer in the UFC. For as much as people want to talk about, Cody's durability, Kai Kara France is not invincible by any means either. He's been dropped 3 times and it's been down at 125 pounds. So, he's fighting a pretty big guy who hits hard, who's a really good boxer. So I think Cody's a decent look. Maybe he gets more ownership than I'm anticipating, but from what it seems, at least, the general market tends to be pretty low on him in this spot. And as a result, I'm going to be overweight on him for also his upside in a win, which is very, I shouldn't say heavily entrenched on a knockout, but it's very, very live.
Yeah, I see a lot of love for Kai out there, so I do think Garbrandt's going to come in a lot lower than a lot lower than I think. For me, I hate to be boring here, but for my favorite value play is actually going to be Amanda Nunes. It's between that and another guy, but I'm using another guy for the next section. But the reason it's Amanda Nunes, I think of it this way: last week, Brendan Allen was 9,600. Like, this price tag makes no sense. So yeah, Amanda Nunes 9,500. I think she's too cheap. So give me Amanda Nunes for my value play. AJ, how about you? Who's your favorite value play?
Yeah, I'm going to double down on the fade that I gave out and go with Tony Kelly at 7,200. And Costa, I've never been that high on him. I mean, I think he's really dangerous early. I thought his stand-up looked better than ever last time out against Nunes. But when we've seen him extended past 5 minutes, he just tends to fall apart. I don't know if it's just like a mental lapse thing. I mean, he looks like he's getting a little bit tired, but it's almost just like once the tide starts to turn, he just doesn't react that well. And like we talked about, Tony Kelly's a good striker, a guy that has fought at 145 pounds in the past. He hasn't fought in about a year. He did slow down that last fight against Al-Casey, but what I will say is that was a very grappling heavy fight. I don't expect that to be the same here. And as we learned in his debut, he's got tremendous output. And so what I'm more so banking on here is that it's an extended fight. Again, Kelly could use his range. He's got good kicks. He's reasonably technical there. And then just extend Costa and get him tired where he could potentially finish himself. I know that Tony is coming off 2 decisions, but just seeing how Costa reacts, and both times we've seen him lose, he just hasn't looked that good in the second round. So sign me up for Tony Kelly at 7,200. I think he's very, very sneaky.
There you go. Yeah, very sneaky indeed. We'll keep moving on to our dart throw. I'll kick this one off, and Weezy actually brought this one up. My dart throw is going to be Geoff Neal, and I thought I was going to be betting on Ponzinibbio, but after looking into it, I was like, man, if Geoff Neal, didn't go to the Petersons for Thanksgiving, I probably would be betting him here, especially at this price. And I kind of want to see him at weigh-ins, but I think that if Geoff Neal shows up and he looks good at the weigh-ins, I feel like he can win this fight. Ponzinibbio has been knocked out, I think, 3 times in his career. He was getting hurt by Baeza in that first round as well. And Geoff Neal hits like an absolute truck. He's 8,000. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him because of that narrative. So yeah, Geoff Neal for me, 8,000, my favorite dart throw there. Weezy, how about you? Who's your favorite dart throw?
So I'm going with a low-priced one because we're going to need to punt with at least one person to try to get some of those higher salary fighters in there. So I'm gonna go with Matt Schnell at 7,000, and I actually like Perez quite a bit to win this fight. But both of Perez's UFC losses happened inside the distance, and Matt has a really sneaky submission game. I think he'll be very low owned due to the low inside the distance and fight doesn't go to decision props on this fight. However, I think both these guys have a sneaky high chance to finish inside the distance. It's a good low-key fight to target in GPPs, and I think Schnell will be very low owned. But the numbers that I have for you guys here is that Matt Schnell has finished 8 of his 15 career wins inside the distance by submission. And in Alex Perez's 6 total career losses, 5 of them have been inside the distance, and 4 of them have been by submission. And he's getting submitted by guillotines and arm bars and triangles, right? And Perez is somebody who offensively wrestles quite a bit. He's got 11 takedowns in 9 fights, and he's getting those takedowns at a 45% clip, and he's controlling his opponents about 37.5% of the time. So if he does get that wrestling game going and he takes Schnell down, there's a chance that Schnell could catch him. So I think that if Schnell does win this fight, and it's a low percentage of that happening, I think there's a high percentage of the chance that it happens inside the distance by submission. And man, if you get a submission finish from a $7,000 punt, you're going to be in business this week.
Oh yeah, for sure. Luke, how about you? Who are you liking for a dart throw?
Going Tony Kelly at 7.2K. I think AJ brought up a lot of really good points. Mainly, well, first and foremost, I think he's going to be incredibly low owned. Everybody loves their first round finisher, which is Randy Costa. But the reality is he's never won a fight past the 2-minute mark in his entire pro career and has slowed down in every single extended affair that he's been in. Kelly's an extremely tough guy, obviously never been KO'd, but primarily where he struggled has been in being out wrestled by better wrestlers, in Kai Kamaka or Al-Casey, but that's just not the game that Costa brings. Kelly, like I said, he's a big guy. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. He's a competent submission grappler. As a purple belt, has a handful of subs. And one thing I really noticed, in taping this dude over the years, is that he builds throughout fights. So you have a very interesting dynamic here, where you have a extreme front runner in Randy Costa against a guy who gets better as fights go on in Tony Kelly. Considering also that Tony Kelly's never been KO'd before, there is still just a ton of questions on Randy Costa at 7.2K. If he doesn't get blasted, which is definitely in play here, but if he doesn't, in relation to the salary for what his potential upside is here on a guy who's been finished, also when he slowed down, he gassed against Brandon Davis. He got choked out with no hooks in. Obviously, Giannis then just took over and beat his ass in the second round. 7.2K is an excellent dart throw on Tony Kelly, in my opinion.
Yep, I totally agree. AJ, how about you? Who's your favorite dart throw?
Yeah, it's not really my style to do this, but there's just not a ton of options. More so betting against the narrative here, and that's Dan Ige at 7,400. Josh Emmett is rightfully the favorite, in my opinion, but there's just a lot of red flags on him. He's 36 now. He's coming off of so many injuries. Like, you just don't really know what you're going to get out of the guy. And with Dan Ige, you have a guy that's been consistently very tough, has been fighting in main event fights. Yes, he has lost them, mostly to Chan Sung Jong and Calvin Kattar, most notably, but he made a good account of himself in both fights. He was reasonably competitive. He had some moments. He took at least a round from both guys there, and those are top tier featherweights. And I do consider Emmett a very good fighter, but just show me something, kind of like after all this sort of thing, right? Again, Ige 7,400. He's a very good fighter. Anytime you have a talented fighter of his caliber priced that cheaply, I'm willing to take a chance there. It's very, very interesting. It kind of reminds me of just, through the years, you see like Daniel Cormier priced very cheap against Stipe Miocic when they fight, Dustin Poirier against Conor McGregor the second time. It's always just intriguing whenever you get a very talented fighter that is priced down that low. And that's what Danny Gay is. He's a very good featherweight.
Yes, he definitely is. That's a good option there for sure. But we'll move on. If anybody in the chat has any questions, put them in the chat and then we'll answer them. But first, we're going to go through our lineups. Last week, Luke did not have a lineup. He was sick. So it was just me, Weezy, and AJ. And last place was me. I think this was probably the worst line I've ever given out ever. Allen, Crute, Font, Poyas, Patolo, and Wells scoring 187. Weezy with Crute, Menefield, Smolka, Font, Poyas, and Martin scoring 253. And then the winner, AJ, Font, Martin, Poyas, Santos, Smolka, and Dusko. So I think me and Weezy were like 1 for 6. And then AJ, you were 2 for 6, but you got the job done.
Yeah, thanks. And I can't take a bow after that performance. I mean, that was just one of those cards where it's just like all the favorites are losing. And you're just kind of lucky if you script by with a profit. It was very, very tough. It's unfortunate whenever it seems like everybody that I know on a card like that just doesn't do that well. Of course, there are some winners out there, so congrats to you. But it was a tough week, right? So I think this week will be just a little bit more fortunate, if not a lot more fortunate. So just based on the fact that it simply just couldn't get much worse than last week in terms of predictions and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it can't get any worse than last week. That is for sure. So we'll do our lineups for this week. I'll start it off. For me, I'm going to go up top. I'm going to get Bruno Silva, Amanda Nunes, Charles Oliveira, Jeff Neal, Eric Anders, and Kai Kara France. Weezy, do you have a lineup for this week?
I sure do. I'm going to go with Bruno Silva. I'm going to go with Ryan Hall at 8,900, Poirier at 8,600. Then I'm going Jeff Neal at 8,000, Eric Anders 7,700, and Dan Ige at 7,400.
Sounds good. Luke, do you have a lineup for this week?
Yep, I'm going Poirier, O'Malley, Anders, Blanchfield, Robertson, and Kelly.
And AJ.
Going to go with Oliveira, Kara France, Kelly, Hall, Nunes, and Robertson.
All right, sounds good. So we'll see who wins this week. It's going to be a big, fun card. But let's answer some questions in the chat. So I'm going to go up, check out the ones that we missed here. OKK saying, does Weezy have Maverick to win? Yo.
I have no idea who's going to win that fight. I have to pick somebody by tonight for just the tip at 10 o'clock Central Time. Y'all be there, but that fight is so close to me. What I'm looking at is that the value is on the underdog, because I'm looking at that as like a 50-50 fight. That it should spend a lot of time on the ground, and I think Blanchfield is just as good as Maverick there. So I'm very worried that Maverick, even though I think she probably does win the fight, that a bet on her is going to just be really, really close. I think it's going to the judges.
Yeah, we didn't touch on that. I think that was like the only fight we didn't touch on. Luke, do you have any thoughts on that fight? Any strong leans one way or another?
I mean, I have Blanchfield in my lineups. I mean, I think that Maverick is the better striker. She definitely has more physicality in the matchup, but I mean, she did drop the second round to Robertson via grappling. She's been out grappled before. Blanchfield's going to be aggressive in attempting takedowns, and I think her hands have really come a long way as well. I don't think she's screwed on the feet here at all. I just more see upside in her as potentially being the better submission grappler in this fight. So there's more Draftkings based value there.
Sounds good. Matthew saying, AJ, have you ever been on MMA Spot or News? I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
So there you go. So no, I guess no. Weezy, thoughts on O'Malley, Nunes, Muniz parlay?
I actually am picking Anders to win that fight. I don't like that matchup for Muniz, because Anders has been very, very good at keeping fights standing. And, if that fight stays standing for a long period of time, I just don't see Muniz winning. If he gets it to the ground, I think Anders is going to be a little bit better defensively than we all think he might be. So no, I wouldn't go with Muniz on there. But if you're really happy with him, O'Malley and Nunes should absolutely win. So, I take that for what it's worth.
I just noticed the name John Jones cellmate. That's very creative. Who gets the ass shaving picks? Weezy, you're giving out your ass shaving tonight, right?
Yeah, tonight, 10 o'clock Central Time, we're going to go through all 15 fights on the UFC 269 card. Man, I got my work cut out for me. I'm going to keep it under 2 hours for you guys. And at the end, you'll get Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. There's a lot of great candidates to choose from this week.
So we'll see that tonight. But Luke, do you have an ass shaving for this week?
Oh, man. That's O'Malley. I think O'Malley fucks Paiva up, to be honest. That's my ass shaving.
Nice. I like it. AJ, who's your ass shaving?
Nunes. I mean, yeah. Amanda Nunes.
There you go. That's a good one for me. I'm going to say actually Jillian Robertson. I think she snaps off Priscilla Cachoeira's arm and wipes her ass with it. So that's my ass shaving there. Is anybody picking Cruz?
Yeah, I am. I mean, not to, spoil the predictions at the end, but I'm picking Cruz to win.
Maybe he's talking about from like a DraftKings perspective. And if he's talking about DraftKings, I don't see myself having much Cruz on DK. Do any of you guys?
That was my fight to avoid, actually.
Yeah, Munhoz is just I don't like to target the guy fighting Munhoz, because Munhoz is so crazy durable and tough to finish, and Cruz isn't really a power puncher. He could land a bunch on Munoz's head, but in this new scoring system, he's going to have to go out there and look like O'Malley against Moutinho or Holloway against Cater. Otherwise, it's just, it's most likely not going to be enough.
Yeah, no takedowns, no finish, more than likely. So I think we're all on the same page there. Luke, is the over 1.5 in the Nunes fight worth the sweat?
Dude, I've been going back and forth on this like crazy, man. I think there's definitely merit to Nunes knocking her. I think it's more so just on Peña approach. Does she try to take the Felicia Spencer route of just kind of staying safe, playing on the outside, tries not to get knocked out? Or is she going to go out there and try to aggressively wrestle her early, which I think would probably be smart, but I think it's just all infringed on Peña approach. So I can see it going over. I can see it going under. I wouldn't be shocked either way.
Yeah, kind of a tough one to call. I don't know if I'd want to sweat the Nunes over there personally, but a lot of people I do see are on that. So we'll go and give our quick picks for the card here. Weezy, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, sir. I will go with Dustin Poirier, Amanda Nunes in a shock, and then I'm going to go with Geoff Neal. I'm going to go with Kai Kara France. O'Malley, Emmett over Ige. I'm going to go with, I have no idea who's winning that Cruz Munhoz fight. I'll say Munhoz. Tuivasa, Bruno Silva, Eric Anders. God, I have no idea who's winning the Montreal Maverick fight. I'll say Maverick. Alex Perez, Ryan Hall, Randy Costa, and Jillian Robertson.
I'm going to go Charles Oliveira for the upset. Give me Amanda Nunes. Give me Geoff Neal. Cody Garbrandt. Give me Sean O'Malley. Give me Josh Emmett. Dominick Cruz. Augusto Sakai. Bruno Silva. Eric Anders. Blanchfield. Alex Perez. Ryan Hall. Randy Costa, and then Jillian Robertson. Luke, how about you?
I'm going to go Poirier, Nunes, Pons, Garbrandt, O'Malley, Emmett, Munhoz, Sakai, Silva, Anders, Maverick, Perez, Hall, Kelly, and Robertson.
And AJ?
Oliveira, Nunes, Ponzinibbio, Carr France, O'Malley, Emmett, Cruz, Tuivasa, Silva, Anders, Maverick, Perez, Hall, Costa, and Robertson.
Sounds good. Yeah, fun show, guys. Cannot wait for this card. Weezy, I know you are busy tonight. You have a show at, was it 10 or 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern tonight? How about you tell us about that, and then what else you got going on this week?
Yeah, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, just the tip with Uncle Weezy. I'm going to break down all 15 fights on this card from a statistical perspective. I'm right here on Pub Sports Radio for this show every Tuesday, and then for Stat Diggers with my man Brady every Sunday night, 5:15 p.m. Central Time. And I'll also be doing 2 Balls Deep breakdowns on my channel on Wednesday, probably one at 5 o'clock Central, another one at 10 o'clock Central. So real busy this week, and got some big things coming up next week, too, which I'll let you know about later.
Sounds good. Luke, how about you? What do you have going on throughout the week, and where can they find you?
Twitter, SWR_betting. Post a lot of funny shit. Like to have some fun on there. Shoot me a follow, guys. Would appreciate it. Open some podcast every single Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, with all the boys breaking down all these fights. Patreon.com/SWRbetting. Bets, content, 3 to 4 content pieces a week. Bringing back actually the live podcast this week too, so be sure to check that out if you guys are interested. I'm actually going to be jumping on with Jonah and John and the boys at FTN this week on Thursday as well, breaking down these fights. Our boy John just hit like a $400,000 Draftkings hit for football on Monday night. Absolutely crazy. So I'm on there. I think it's going to be a bit of a selly type podcast. I think the boys were going to be having a few drinks on there, so it should be a super fun time. So hit that up too, guys.
Yeah, shout out to John. If I won $400K, I wouldn't be on a podcast. I'd be like on vacation at that point. But yeah, shout out to him.
No, that's just
me
and Jonah. We're probably not even going to be. We might be taking over the podcast. We might not even see John anymore. He might just be out on a boat in fucking Costa Rica or something now.
Yeah, shout out to him. Big win there. AJ, how about you? Where can they find you? What do you have going on this week?
Yeah, so got a couple bets posted. They're on ajmmabetting.com. Gonna have the usual content, the write-ups, podcast as well. I'm actually gonna hop on with my good friend Brett Apley for the premium podcast at dailyfanmma.com. Contribute there as well. Lucas contributed there as well in the past. Good site, all your needs for daily fantasy content. Yeah, best of luck everybody in the chat. Brady, Weezy, Luke, cheers. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, for sure. And you can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers, my YouTube channel, DFS by the numbers, and then on here, Pub Sports Radio, Sundays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Saturdays. So that has been it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like on your way out. Subscribe here to Pub Sports. Check these guys out as well. And good luck for UFC 269. Should be a big